Welcome to the 8th Process Innovation Challenge here at LocWorld41. We're really excited. We have 6 fantastic innovators with their new innovations that they are going to debut to you today. The way that this contest works, it's pretty simple. We start and our innovators pitch. We then ask questions from our 3 dragons and our keynote speaker from the venture capital community that will ask them about how their innovation might affect the industry. And then at the very end, we'll ask you to vote. This is the 3rd year of the Process Innovation Challenge. As I mentioned, this is the 7th time we've held it. This was the first time that we had so many submissions that we actually had to go to a virtual round in order to help cull down the results. So the 6 innovators you are seeing today were actually voted on and selected by our dragons from a field that was actually 22 submissions this time. So the contest continues to grow, and we're excited to offer a platform for young innovators in the industry. Here are how the rules work. Each innovator gets exactly 4 minutes. If they go long, we will stop them. After the 4 minutes, we go to a brief question and answer session for each of the innovators. We'll ask 1 or 2 questions from our dragons or our keynote speaker. And then at the very end, we'll do the voting and the tabulation. Just to give you an idea of how the voting will work, we're weighting our dragons' votes at 10% of the total audience vote. So if there's 80 audience votes, they will be counted for 8 votes each. And that's how we'll tabulate it up. And at the very end, we'll announce a winner. So the way that we'll collect your votes is that we use a technology called Slido. And in order to use this, it's a couple of very simple instructions. Please open up, you don't have to do it right now, but during the session, open up a browser either on your phone or tablet. Any browser will work. All you need to do is go to www.slido.com. It will immediately prompt you to enter a hashtag, and that hashtag is LocWorld41. All lowercase, one word, LocWorld41. And that will get you in. At any time when you're watching an innovator speak, if you have a question for the innovator, we've saved some time at the end too for one question per innovator from the audience. Feel free to submit your question at any time during the session. Please make sure that you mention the name of the innovator so that we know who you're addressing. At any time, you'll be able to see the other questions that are coming in from the audience. Feel free to go ahead and upvote them, and we'll pick the most popular question for each innovator. I think several of you were in our keynote session just a moment ago. Hopefully you saw Vitali's fascinating presentation on the corporate innovation black box. We also have 3 dragons on stage too that are also helping, and I'd like to briefly introduce them. First, we have Neftali Jovel, Director of Localization at Indeed. We also have Alessandra Benazzi, Director of Localization at ASICS Digital. And finally, Konstantin Savinkov, CEO of Intento. So I will be actually in the audience, and I'll be helping to moderate the questions that come in from you, and I will also be helping to tabulate the votes at the end. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to my co-moderator from LanguageWire. This is Jeff Kaiser. Please welcome. Thank you very much.
So what we wanted to do is start off with a question following Vitali's keynote around basically innovations. And one of the subjects that I noticed during the keynote, and I was sort of trying to formulate, a good question for relevancy here. You mentioned, the growth in the different parts of the world, from China at 5%, from, I think I saw Africa, 3.8%. So in these developed markets, obviously around the world, those innovations are going to be not massive leaps, but I think in Africa, it will be some sort of major leap at some point in the future. So my question is, where do you see this industry fitting into that sort of, that leap? Because obviously many of the companies don't have a huge amount of African languages that are part of their day-to-day in translation. However, if this particular leap may have an innovation that really affects that continent, how do you see this industry kind of coming along with that?
So this industry is going to be increasingly more important as the world gets smaller and these markets all become one eventually. So I think you are definitely a big part of this whole consolidation process. As far as the numbers are annual growth numbers, right? So we're talking about average for the next decade, how fast these regions are going to grow. If you compound that, that's really big. And the important thing is when we're talking about innovation, it's really about doing something in a new, different way that you weren't able to do a year ago, 2 years ago. And that's what really startups do, is they take new technology and leverage it to completely disrupt the way something is being done or open up opportunities that weren't possible before. So when you're thinking about ideas and what you're going to be dedicating the next, let's say, decade of your life to, if you're starting out on a new project, new startup, you really need to think about what's going to be relevant a little bit down the road, right? You're launching a rocket ship, a missile that needs to hit the right market at the right time. So don't think what's relevant today. Think about how the world is changing and how this is going to be relevant 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. That's really important.
Thank you very much. Okay. So at this point, I think we're going to get started. So our first presenter today, Robert Rogi, from Zing Word, a new way to set up source and target languages.
Can I have the microphone there? Cool. Alrighty. Let's set the stage here. So let's say you have several files to translate, and you have a different mix of source languages. So you have like a bunch of different files. You have a bunch of different files in different source languages. And then you have also a different mix of target languages. So you've got files and you want them in all different target languages. And so if you wanted to set up your files for translation in whatever tool you're using, this might look familiar to you because as you know, it doesn't go very well. It's very difficult to do multi-source projects or any language to any language projects. And it's actually becoming more and more common because we have more and more content and we just want to create whatever kind of project we want to create, right? And when you scale it up, the problem gets increasingly worse from there, like when you're integrating with other systems and you just want to translate your content. So let's take it back. It was like the 1980s, or maybe it was the 1990s, and when we were inventing all this stuff, like, I wasn't there, but it was really cool just to be able to translate content at all. So we were rocking out, and you had your project, you had your language pairs, which were like entities in the database, and then your documents were underneath that. And then you go to like the 2000s, and we're still rocking out, man, we're translating all this content, everything's great, but we didn't really change anything there. And then you fast forward to today, and actually it's the same thing. Like, we haven't really changed the way we work with language pairs all this time. So when we were building Zing Word, we were designing it, and we kind of thought, are we really sure that that's the right way to do it? And what we decided was that we needed to put the content in the center of that, separate source languages and target languages, so it's not like a pair, and it's associated to the content and not to the project. And so the results of this were like pretty cool. It doesn't matter how much content you have if you use this method. It doesn't matter which language combinations you have. You can do your projects however you want. And so you can do any language combinations. You don't have to split projects for different languages depending on what system you use. And then you get automatic source language detection on all your files, which is kind of a bonus. And you can manage your documents in a single place. And there's no more like weird UI stuff going on there. So now we have a video. I'm setting up languages there. Right on. So like what you see is going on here is like on the right-hand side, you can see those are the documents, and then you can see the source language, and that's detected automatically. And then, because the target languages are just attributes of your files, you can just use a checkbox to decide what you're doing. So it's actually like a super complicated languages setup, but it literally just takes like 15 seconds. So actually, let's watch it again because it's like super complicated, but we make it look really easy. So that's pretty much it. Yeah. All right, I'm open for questions. It's questions now, right?
The Dragons want to ask any questions at this time?
Sure. After the magic happens, what then? Is it just a regular then kind of TMS process where you can choose your workflows, you know, choose your deadlines, it goes to the translators, into a TM and terminology? Does all that stay the same?
Right. You mean like in Zing Word or just like for the innovation if people were to use it?
In Zing Word, once
Right.
the magic is done of the language detection and the different
Yeah.
languages, then how do you choose what happens to the rest of the project? Or
Right on. Yeah, I mean, in Zing Word, so what you can do is you can work with translators there, so you can find specialized translators. You can check out their prices and stuff. You select them, upload your documents, you get your word counts, all that stuff. You can set up a crazy whatever languages project, and then you go to like a staffing where you're staffing the translators for the documents that you have, and then it goes out to like a cat tool or like this. It doesn't. I'm not quite sure I follow your question. I think the ramifications of the innovation are more like if you had, for example, a file with 2 source languages. Like if you had like the way it's traditionally done with language pairs, like they function like buckets. So then it's like, what bucket does it go in? And in this case, they're just attributes of the file. So like you'd have 2 source languages, and each one is an attribute of the file. The same thing with like source language detection. Like because you're not setting up a language pair bucket, then it's like, oh yeah, now we can just detect the source language when you upload the file. So if you ever wonder like why most of our systems don't detect source language, it's because you need to set up your pair first, which is kind of weird when you think about it. There's other things like when you deliver your files, instead of like delivering your files into a directory structure where you have like the languages you're delivering into. In this case, the deliveries would also just be associated with the file. So you'd have your file, and then you have the deliveries on the file. It's like a different way of thinking, but then everything you do gets easier after that. I don't know if I kind of answered your question.
This is a bit technically over my head because I'm not in your industry, but from the standpoint of a pitch, and this is feedback for everybody, maybe a little bit in advance for everybody else's, you always want to frame this presentation because you have a very short period of time to tell a story and get people interested and get them to remember 1 or 2 things. You want to frame it as a customer problem framework, right? So who's the customer and what's the problem you're solving? Mm-hmm. If you open up with that, it's a lot easier to get the context. The other part of it is also you really zeroed in on a lot of features but neglected to talk or really emphasize the benefits.
Yeah, right.
And that's really the important aspect here when you're talking about, how do you differ? What's the innovation? What's the alternative? How is this currently being done? Why is it inadequate? Why is your approach so breakthrough and deserves attention? Right? That's the idea there.
Yeah, the problem is just setting up your languages. So if you have a complicated setup, or you have content in different source languages and different target languages, and you just want to run this through easily without splitting your projects, that's the problem. So I think the people in the room probably know what I'm talking about.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, next is going to be Heather Shoemaker from Language.io, who's going to be talking about machine learning for automated customer support translation.
And I'm just going to use this one, I think. Hello, everybody. I'm Heather Shoemaker, co-CEO of a company called Language.io. Language.io, this is not, whoops, wrong way. This is Language.io. Language.io allows English-speaking customer support agents to provide support in any language. Our apps are embedded right inside of the platforms where the support agents already work. This includes Salesforce, Zendesk, Oracle Service Cloud. The apps automate translation of support content across any e-support channel. So that would mean support articles, support emails or tickets, and of course support chats, which will be the focus of my 4 minutes. Before I dive into the details of the innovation, I'm going to play a recorded demo of our existing solution. So what you're seeing here on the left-hand side is a support agent working inside of Salesforce. The agent is using the Language.io chat translation app to chat in Spanish with a customer on the right-hand side. So we'll call the customer on the right-hand side Anna. Anna launched a support session from an online betting site. And by the way, Anna's chat was an actual chat that recently came through Language.io for translation. Despite the fact that Anna uses 3 misspellings and a few weird abbreviations, Language.io adequately translates this chat to, I have redeemed the promo code for the winner of the French Open with Rafael Nadal, and you have not given me the latest free. Okay, so we get it. Anna wants to place a bet on Rafael Nadal in the French Open, but she tried to redeem a promo code and couldn't. If we had just passed raw MT through to the support agent, it would have read like this. I have made the promotion for the Gana 4 of the RG with Rafa, and you have not given me the Ultima free. The support agent would have no idea, right? Language.io is able to take this unintelligible MT and turn it into something understandable. But today we do that through manual labor in the form of rule generation. We use these rules to normalize the incoming support content, and then we send that normalized support content through to a general MT engine. Now, we don't expect general MT to properly translate terms like RG or Rafa. That's tennis specific, right? But today we also have to perform a lot of work to fix common misspellings and grammar errors, unless we could predict beforehand which of our integrated engines are going to provide the best translation. So Microsoft at least figured out that DAFO was a misspelling for dado and properly translated it to given. Google, on the other hand, detected 3 misspellings. If we had started with Google, we would have had a lot less work to do. But how could we know? The innovation that Language.io is building is a machine learning platform that will be able to automatically predict which of our integrated neural machine translation engines is going to best translate Anna's chat. It's going to be built on top of a lot of data that we already gather. But because it's machine learning, it's actually going to learn from feedback loops. One of those feedback loops will be the edit distance data coming from our human translation platform. Another feedback loop will be customer satisfaction scores coming from our integrated CRMs. All of this experience will be fed into the engine, and the engine on its own will improve its ability to select the best NMT engine for any given support chat coming through our system. In the end, this innovation is simply going to make it so we have to do less work to allow the customer support agent to understand the customer. Now, it's not in production yet, but we are betting a lot of money and time that once we get it into production, it's going to drastically improve our processes. And sometimes, bets pay off. Thank you for your time.
Do we have any questions from the Dragons? Okay. Konstantin?
Yeah. Do you expect that this system will train for every customer individually, independently, or are you going to combine data from different clients to make it work right away without this warm-up period?
Well, did you say train for customers individually?
Yeah.
Okay, so like I was saying, the terms like RG and Rafa, that's industry-specific, tennis-specific. We don't expect general MT to figure that out. So we will still continue to have to perform some normalization, some rule development, but significantly less when we've got the existing neural machine translation engines, the general ones, untrained ones, meeting us halfway, because they're already fixing the grammar mistakes, the misspellings. Does that answer your question?
Not really. So, I mean, your system trains, right? It learns from data it gathers. Will it be learning only from data from this client, for this client, or leveraging data from different clients?
It will be leveraging data from different clients where we're able to, absolutely.
So I have a question about kind of the scale of the business, not being familiar with it. It would be helpful if you talk about some of the big customers you have, some numbers around the business, size of your team, things like that.
Sure. So there's some data I can't share with everybody here. But yeah, absolutely. We do have big customers already for our existing solution. Some of these would be iRobot, LinkedIn, Constant Contact. We've got a long list, and they're on our website. We're a core team of 15 full-time employees right now. But we work with human translators all over the world for some aspects of the services that we provide and for the learning piece of it. Does that answer your question? Okay. Anything else?
Maybe better offline.
Okay, sounds good.
I have a quick follow-up to you, Heather. So where do you anticipate it to scale in the coming year?
Where do we participate?
As far as like headcount, kind of the
how quickly do we plan to grow?
Yeah.
Well, we're actually in the process of raising an equity A round. We just completed a seed round. So we're going to grow as fast as we can.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, hand applause for Heather. All right, next up will be Lucio Gutierrez from Intent talking about Magic UI.
Don't start the timer, please. I'm just gonna move this side. Is that okay with you, dragons? Yeah? Awesome. There you go. All right. Non-blocking, democratization, quality, and speed at scale. Those are the capabilities that Magic UI enables. I have it. There you go. So what is Magic UI? Magic UI is a Chrome extension with on-the-cloud capabilities to support content creation and editing in product. So what does it solve for? Magic UI solves for 3 different things: quality, in product content editing; speed, content updates go live within minutes; scale, content updates supported for all languages. Did I say democratization and non-blocking as well? How does it work?
Hi, Parisa. Thank you for taking my call.
Hi, Lucio.
We have this problem. We have Jira tickets that have been open for months, and we don't know how to close them or fix them, actually, because we don't know where those strings are in the product, and we really need to make those changes. I heard that you developed a new feature in QEO that allows you to do in-context editing. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. Do you want me to show you that?
That would be awesome. Thank you so much. Yes.
So here I am in my QuickBooks account. So what are the strings that you want to change?
There are 2, actually. One is privacy. We would like that to be secured, all capital.
Okay. Here you just click on them and...
Wow. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Wow. Also, we would like to change expenses to be cost. We got feedback from our customers that it makes more sense to them that to be called costs.
Costs. There you go.
I didn't know that was that easy.
Let me show you how it works. So inside the QuickBooks, when you click on any of the labels, you can edit them. And let's say you want to change, for example, connect your bank to connect to your bank. Then this information will be sent to our string database, this is the new string that you just suggested. We have the key, we have the locale, we have the resource bundle, and some information about the plugin as well. It will go to our string database, and someone from the translation team will go there and approve your suggestions. and then it will go to production in the next release of QBO.
All right, how we're doing with numbers. Magic UI has been running at Intuit for 13 months. We have filed more than 5,000 bugs in QuickBooks. Over 60% of those bugs have been resolved in our translation memories and in our product. More than 6,000 hours have been saved across teams. Did I say democratization? That means that not only content teams can do this, but also developers, XD, architects, PM, everybody. It took us 3 months to localize and translate QBO Mexico, not only the product, but also the help content. Why? Because we knew that once it's out and there is an issue in there, we can go to the product, fix it right away. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucio. Do we have any questions from the Dragons?
Thank you. So I was wondering if you capture, those updates in your regular translation flow in a TM, so that these numbers, like the 5,000 bugs that you fixed, do they actually decrease over time, or do you continue to have to fix 5,000 bugs every time?
Yes. So what we do in parallel is that we keep a paper trail, you call it like that. We create Jira tickets. Those Jira tickets contain information about the strings being edited in the product, plus screenshots. So automatically you get that information, which is some metadata and screenshots. And so our translation and localization team is working in parallel to fix those translation memories. Yeah.
Are the screenshots created automatically?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
I can show you. Too bad I don't have my machine, but yes. Those screenshots are created automatically as soon as you just hit enter. As you saw in those text fields, it goes straight to our Jira tickets system. Yeah.
And then it's up to the localization team to update the
translation memories.
assets.
That's correct. So what we are doing, actually, using this tool, is called continuous localization and translation. So every time we process everything, it gets better and better and better.
So you just need to go one step further and alleviate the localization team from doing those updates themselves.
A little bit. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Do you have any way of, governing? You said can't say this word. Letting anybody be able to make changes. How do you prevent from maybe changes you don't want to be made by the wrong, not the wrong people, but people who don't know what they're doing?
Yes. So this is being rolled out to people we know are going to provide good content. And that includes everybody, but we work with everybody here, I guess, works with the developers, architects, product managers. And so we know who to go to in every region to enable this tool. Right? Yeah, so that's our manual way of doing it right now. Right?
So I'm not 100% clear on how this works mechanically. Are you able to push these changes right into production code, or does this generate a ticket that then developers
It's
update?
two things. We generate those tickets, and we can push those to code using semantic versioning. Okay. So what it means is that every time there is a commit from Magic UI, we know it's a commit in a string. So that creates a semantic versioning commit that the build pipeline would take, knows it's a string change, it will refresh prod.
And somebody would verify this?
Yes.
As well?
Yes, on parallel via the Jira tickets. That's right.
And more importantly, are you planning to spin this out as a developer tool for others to use, or is this just an internal tool?
Right now, it is an internal tool at the Intuit. Yes.
This might be an interesting product for developers.
Yes.
Yep.
That's right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Lucio. Appreciate it. Next up will be Lori Silverstein from SPI Global talking about AI dubbing.
Where's
Clicker?
clicker? Oh.
Hello. I am super excited to introduce you to SmartDub. It's an innovative technology and service that's based on the AI processing of synthetic voice and the latest advancements in voice morphology applied to text-to-speech. I think the best way to show it to you is with a sample, and I'm going to show you a clip from a Thai movie that has been smart dubbed into English entitled Nora.
Ouch.
Don't come near me. Are you Mr. Channon?
Yes, my name is Channon.
I am Nora, right?
Weird question. Yes, you're Nora. Yes.
And you're not my husband, am I right?
Nope. No, I am not. I wish I was.
Pretty cool, huh? I'm not going to tell you what happens next with Nora. But we know scaling content globally is a massive challenge in getting both the language right and bridging the cultural gaps. It's a massive challenge today for studios, for e-learning, and other related markets. Our goal with SmartDub is to get beyond the subs and dubs dilemma. It's an alternative or middle ground between text-to-speech and human voiceover. It lets the user easily and enjoyably, I'm sorry, I'm not good at this whole thing, easily and enjoyably follow the plot, the storyline, the game, or the course materials without having to rely on reading subtitles. We've initially focused this on areas where we could have a real impact globally, in underserved markets and geographies where literacy may be an issue and it's at a price point comparable to subtitles. SmartDub relies on a markup language applied to any type of script ahead of phoneme generation. We typically receive the timed script from our customer, and we modulate it on the four facets of speech: pitch, tone, volume, and speed, which allows for tons of character differentiation and emotion. Picture the graphic equalizer on the top where you could tweak the mapping to get the voice morphing that you want. It really puts you in control of the character differentiation. So what we've tried to do to really show you how this works is we've taken a famous line from The Godfather and we've morphed the voices to show you how you can differentiate the characters in English, French, and German.
I am going to make him an offer he cannot refuse.
I am going to make him an offer he cannot refuse.
I am going to make him an offer he cannot refuse.
Je vais lui faire une offre, il ne peut pas refuser.
Ich werde ihm ein Angebot machen, das nicht ablehnen kann.
So hopefully you've seen an offer you can't refuse. Our goal with SmartDub is to create a richer, stickier user experience. Production cycles are reduced to hours instead of days, and it eliminates the high cost of studio time and human voice talent. It allows for very high reuse of content assets, and the productivity is very high because it's almost a fully automated solution. You can literally launch multiple languages simultaneously globally. SmartDub's been jointly developed by SPI, the leading BPO provider in content and technology solutions, and with Hook, the leading premium video on demand services provider for emerging markets in Asia. Our vision is that we can get localized content into every part of the world and be able to serve audiences who we haven't previously been able to reach with content. Thank you.
So what it's shown is like 4 parameters per word. So does this labeling done manually or it's also automated?
I'm going to let Yvonne answer. He is my partner at Hook and my technical localization expert.
Yeah, so it's still in the development. The refinement process is done manually as part of the, so this is patent pending. And as part of the process, we're developing a module, an application that will do most of the emotional mapping. Obviously, you'll have to do some manual QA, but probably 85 to 90% of the mapping will be done automatically based on the original title mapping.
So I understand you come from the industry, the dubbing industry, right? So as big as that industry is, I think you have a much bigger opportunity here because in near real time you can have a much better result as far as spoken translation. So when you're talking about business communications, dating apps, you name it, there's a lot more content out there being generated every day that this could be plugged into, which is quite interesting. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how long this process takes? What are the inputs that you need for this to work?
Yeah, so mostly we just need a WAV file of the original original content. Then either you have a script or we create a script, time the script, and then it goes into translation, obviously. Then the voice are generated. Well, we'll do the markup, the content markup. The voices are then generated, then QA. So typically, I'll speak of our work. So typically, a movie will take about 2 days.
So if you were to do it like line by line, could you automate, let's say, 80% quality and do it near real time?
Yes.
So I think that's the opportunity.
Yes, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, that's really the opportunity.
So probably what's missing right now is to develop a mapper of the English content so that we can have mapping in English, automated mapping in English, correspondence in the target language, and then you can do simultaneously.
Any other questions?
I was going to ask, you didn't mention how many languages you cover so far, or maybe I missed that.
All commercial languages. All commercial languages at
Okay.
this point. We're focusing on difficult languages because Hook operates in 5 markets. We operate in India, so we do Hindi, Tamil, Telugu. We operate in Thailand, so Thai. Singapore, so English and Chinese, obviously English is done. Then Indonesia, so we're going to launch Bahasa Indonesia pretty soon, in about 2 or 3 months, and Tagalog.
Do you have plans to expand that in the future?
Yes, but I can't tell you which languages because it then shows which geographies we're looking at.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, next will be Dalibor from, I'm sorry, automating linguistic selection using topic modeling. Can you use this?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So today I'll be talking how we can use topic modeling to automate linguist assignment in the localization process. So let's get started. I think you are all familiar with the problem. So you have a document that you want to translate and you want to find the most appropriate linguist that will do the job. I think the first part is quite straightforward. You just, based on the language pair, you filter out the pool of the linguist, and that can work quite often quite well. But often you quite often still end up with a large number of linguists to choose from. And so you are at that moment not really sure what to do. So what people have started doing is that they label the linguist and they label the documents with the domain labels. And using those and by matching those, they filter out the pool even further. And this works quite well, but there's one major drawback, and that's it's a manual process. So it means it cannot be automated and it doesn't scale out. So we at Memsor set out to solve this problem, and this is what we came up with. So we have taken tens of millions of documents and we fed them into a unsupervised machine learning algorithm. And what this algorithm does are 2 things. First, it identifies what are the common topics in all of these large corpus of data documents. And second, important, is that for each of the documents, it tells you what are the topics that make up the content of the document. And what you end up with is a sort of representation, a fingerprint for each of the documents. And this fingerprint, this representation, has one really cool feature. That one is that when there is a similar fingerprint or similar representation, it also means that the documents are similar in content. So well, how we can use this? So when you have a new document that you want to translate, you run the same algorithm on top of it, you create the fingerprint of this new document, and then you match it to the similar document with the similar fingerprints in the whole database. You look who were the linguists working on those documents in the past, and you automatically assign them to the new document as a translators to work on it. So how does this perform? Well, we have benchmarked how manual human labels can improve the relevancy of the linguist pool that people are choosing from. And we compare that to the topic modeling approach that we have developed. And what we have found out that we are able to match or even outperform humans in this task while bringing on additional benefits. This system is fully automated, it can scale out, it's very, very fast. We can find similar documents out of tens of millions in a matter of 60 milliseconds. And we can actually work, this algorithm can even work if you don't have too much historical data. So how does this change things? So this is how it would work before. You would manually look into documents, look at the content, try to find out what is the domain, the subdomain, set up the projects, and after you've done this, you would then go ahead and set up and choose all the relevant linguists for each of the target languages, especially or even in the different workflow steps if you have multiple ones. And as you can see, this can take quite a lot of time, a lot of minutes that the project manager is spending on this quite repetitive task over and over. But with topic modeling, and we can just let it finish. But with topic modeling, you can just select your source language, your target languages, you upload the document, and you let the system and the AI handle everything else for you. That's it. Thank you very much.
I assume when humans select translators, they consider not only their proficiency in certain topics, but also some performance, how they deliver it on time, and so on. And when a system which is based just on topics outperforms this human selection, do you think those other factors are not important?
So that's a good question. So those factors are still important as well, and that's the next steps that we want to go for, because the benchmark I showed, even with the human labels, it was not 100%. Like they're not matching the linguists perfectly. Even there is still a lot of linguists to go through. So we have set out to figure out or at least solve the domain first, and in the next step we'll go look into the quality, the performance, the cost of the linguist, and so on, and make this algorithm more robust and adjustable to different use cases and scenarios.
Does it compare only human translators, or can you also compare a machine translation option for the same documents?
That's a good question. So maybe you know or don't know, we have released MemSource Translate, which is a kind of machine translation hub that chooses the best performing machine translation for a content. Currently we do this decision based on the language pair only, source and target language, but we are working on an improvement where we'll be learning what is the best performing MT engine on source language, target language, and domain as well. So this core technology can be used in many different areas, not just linguist selection, but for example, choosing the best MT and other areas as well.
I have one quick question. Can you set it up so that it looks at the primary translator and then have a secondary as an option if the first translator does not agree to the project?
Yeah, so actually the system can assign multiple linguists, and whichever one picks the first, he can work on the job. And there will be a way to set it up so that I can go 1 by 1 or 3 by 3. That will be up to you.
Very cool. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Tyler Boyd. All right, last but not least, John Tinsley from Iconic Translation Machines, talking about automation in regulated environments, the final frontier.
Thanks, Jeff. So, regulated industries are typically the last to come on board when it comes to technology advancements due to rigidity in existing workflows or concerns around quality and security. Often they'll rather spend more money and take more time than to risk anything. But it doesn't have to be that way, and we're changing how this works with multilingual information. So let's take a look at an example from the legal industry with e-discovery. This is what the traditional discovery process looks like. You've probably seen this in movies where you have people in rooms overnight with boxes sifting through the pages trying to find that smoking gun on their particular legal case. But this is what it looks like today with e-discovery, electronic discovery. There's massive amounts of data. There's a scale issue here. We're talking about 45 billion terabytes of data, and it's growing at a 40% compound annual rate. And the kicker here is that by 2020, so we're pretty much there already, 80% of all litigation will have some multilingual facet to it. And existing manual repetitive processes are not fit for purpose, and they simply don't scale. So what we've done is we've implemented an automated workflow to resolve this issue. It's a 6-step process that allows these practitioners, legal practitioners, law firms, service providers, digital forensic experts to deal with multilingual information quickly, effectively, and securely. So the 6 steps are, at the core, it's neural machine translation that's been domain adapted to the specific content that these people deal with and can be adapted on the fly for them. It doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be fit for purpose. The second thing is language detection. They don't necessarily know what language the document's in, nor do they care. They just need it in their language. And often there's actually multiple languages in a single document. So being able to handle that is a key component of this as well. This is probably one of the most important things, information security. There needs to be absolute clarity on where the data is being processed, how it's being retained, and how it's being stored. And often it needs to be deployed behind the firewall for particular matters as well. One of the questions we get asked most is, how long is this going to take? We could have to translate 10 documents today, but tomorrow there's 10,000 documents that are needed for a court case on Monday. So we have to implement the ability to be able to scale on demand as and when the customer needs. Pardon my French, we get a lot of crap thrown at us in this. The files could be Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoints, scanned images, screenshots of WhatsApp messages, audio files. Again, they don't care. They just want it in a language and a format that they can work with. And the last thing is that this isn't localization. For these folks, translation is a means to an end. So this has to be as seamlessly integrated into their existing workflows as possible. And that's what we've developed here with our relativity integration, which is the platform that 90% of law firms use around the world. This is a real-world, live, practical process innovation. In 2017, we didn't have any recurring business in this area. In 2018, we translated more than 350 million words of content, and this year already we've translated over 1 billion words of content in more than 30 different languages. But the beauty of this approach is that this template can be applied to all regulated industries that have this challenge. So we can offer fast, effective, secure translation, whether it's e-discovery, whether it's pharmacovigilance, whether it's financial compliance or clinic and trials, and let these people deal with multilingual information in one language, their language. Thank you.
So, as I understand, in e-discovery, translation is just a middle step, because you first have to OCR or transcribe speech sometimes, and then after translation you need to do some name entity recognition and stuff like that. Yep. So do you only provide this technology for translation, or you aim to capture more of this pipeline?
It's a good question. So this is one particular product of ours in the legal industry. So generally speaking, as a business, we ask the question, what's happening to the content before it reaches us, and what's happening with it when we hand it off? If there's areas where we can add value on top of what we're doing while we're machine translating, we will do that. In the legal industry, that's pretty much taken care of by other services that are perhaps already in relativity that are there. So we kind of know our place, we get the content translated into a language they can work with and leave it to them. In pharmacovigilance, however, what we learned was we're machine translating something into English, it's then being handed off to somebody who's doing manual detection of side effects of drug names. And we're thinking, we're doing that while we're doing the machine translation, so why wouldn't we not have a value add on top of the translation where we give back tagged output that cuts out more manual steps in the process? So it really kind of depends on kind of what's there in any particular use case or workflow that we're working on.
So when you're doing a machine translation, is that the final product, or in reality do you give them an index to then be able to find the right files and do kind of human translation to verify accuracy when you're talking about legal or HIPAA compliant type of issues?
So in this particular example, by the time the content reaches us for translation, it's already been indexed. So it's already ready for search. So the processors are there. If this content was already in English, they would just be able to continue the search that they've done. But essentially our goal is the searches don't work on the foreign language, or they don't have people who speak those languages. So when we translate it, essentially what we just need to do is be able to have some way to easily link the translated documents to the original indexes within the platform so that they can find both at the same time.
Yeah, there's some liability involved, right? If you're translating a document for legal reasons, in a court case, that has some serious ramifications if you get the translation just a little bit wrong.
Yeah, so this is not the end. This is the means to the end. So they've got this much data at the start. It's not practical to get through it manually. So our goal is to get it down to this so that they can filter out what's relevant. Anything that ultimately needs to go to court for prosecution or something like that, that will get a certified translation.
So that was my question, yeah.
Yeah, at this point, as the lawyers tell us, it's not an exercise in perfection. It's basically just helping them push things through a process.
So it's a productivity tool, but ultimately what they would use in court has to be certified.
Yeah.
Yep.
Why do you see this only for regulated industries? Why do you see this as a viable solution only for, industries that are regulated?
So I guess those 6 specific steps, particularly the one around information security, are the ones that are critical for regulated industries. If you step out of regulated industries where the content isn't HIPAA or something that's very sensitive to a case, tools like Microsoft Translator, Google Translate are in play as well. They don't exist in these industries, and then the content can be a lot more specific. So there's a lot more value to add in these particular industries, though generally speaking, particularly the machine translation component is obviously applicable in a variety of different industries. It's just the barrier to entry is a lot lower, so there's a lot more of a competitive space. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to be proceeding now.
All right, so this is great. We've had some fantastic questions. We're running a little out of time, but we'll take one question from the audience for each of our presenters. So let's start with Robert. Okay. So Robert, the question for you is, does your tool identify domain as well? As you're already on content level, that would be basically the same stage.
Okay, so the question is, does it identify the domain as well? Mm-hmm. No, not right now. So like right now, the buyer is going to select the domain themselves, and then it will, like the translators have their prices in the system set per domain, so then you're going to get instant quotes for all the translators that you're checking out per language pair, per domain, but they have to select it right now. But that's something we were looking at. That's more like what Dalibor is doing with MemSource, was the domain detection.
Great.
But I mean, it's something that everybody I think is doing now. And it's really cool that you guys did it first, so that's cool.
Great. Thanks, Robert. Okay, our next question is for Heather.
Mike or? Okay.
Heather, your question is, how will you go about protecting your customers' data?
That's a very good question, and one of the most important questions today in the environment of GDPR. So we do a number of things to protect our customers' data. We actually assume that any chat or support email coming through our platform contains personal data. We have to make that assumption because customers chat all sorts of things. So the first thing that we do is we have algorithms internally that scan for personal data. If we detect any personal data, we encrypt it and tag it. So we are able to decrypt it on its way back into the CRM. And then secondly, what we do is we only work with neural machine translation engines with whom we have flow down agreements from a GDPR perspective. So we work with a number of MT engines. I don't want to single anybody out, but really good MT engines that will not persist the data once the translation is returned to us, and neither do we persist the data. So once the translation passes back into the CRM, it's literally scrubbed from our system and any subprocessor system.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question is for Lucio.
Sure.
All right. Lucio, can you also change the target in the UI? If yes, does that trigger an update in the TM?
Can you repeat the question again, please?
Sure. Can you also change the target in the user interface? If yes, does that trigger an update in the TM?
So yes, you can change the target. And yes, we update the TM too, but that is a manual process at the moment.
Okay.
That's correct.
Great. Thank you. Our next question is for Lori. Right. And Lori, do you go about, do you identify speakers in a multi-speaker script?
Yes.
For mapping purposes? Okay.
Yes. You threw me a good one.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, you bet. All right. And last but not least, we have one for John. Okay. All right, John, for e-discovery, do you support U.S. government projects, and are you planning to get your solution FedRAMP approved?
Yeah, so we've done quite a bit of work with the DOJ already, though we've done them as behind the firewall solutions. For AWS, which is our cloud provider, we're actually working through the FedRAMP compliance approval process at the moment for a particular RFP that we're working on.
Thank you. And I got out of order there. I forgot we have one for Dalibor as well. And the question for you, Dalibor, is how do you measure the quality of the translated document?
So that's a little bit out of scope of the tool that we were building. So that tool works in the first part of the translation process, not after the translation is done. But to answer your question, we have several metrics in MemServer where you can run an analysis of the final translation. And for example, if you're using translation memory or machine translation, there is a post-editing score that you can get that will tell you how useful that translation was, and give you some hints of how good the quality might be of the translator. But as I mentioned, the tool I mentioned about works in the first part of the translation process, not after the translation is done.
Okay. Since that wasn't specific to your tool, let's take one more for you. And that would be, can I use the tool to choose which PM to handle a project? For example, if we want to use the same PM to handle the same or similar projects.
So this tool kind of has the ambition to change the way project managers interact with the system. So you would probably not have a specific project manager working on the specific project or on specific domains. Where we want to get to is that you will mostly handle exceptions, so project management by exception, where you don't repeat the same process over and over, but the system, when it's not sure that it can make some decision or there is some problem happening and it recognizes the problem is happening, it will just let you know, and you will need to find someone that will take care of this issue.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's hear it one more time for all of our innovators.
Thank you to all innovators. So at this time, I'm going to ask Vitaly, now that you've had a chance to kind of see all these innovations and kind of the breadth of basically any final thoughts or comments and recommendations.
Yeah, so really interesting things happening in this industry, and one thing, when you have to decide kind of what's a feature, what's a big enough goal to become a big standalone company. Not every company is a startup that's going to be venture funded. In fact, very few are, but the ones that are funded are making a big change. They're making kind of a revolution. So when you're deciding what you're working on in general, I would say always think bigger. And if you're focused on one particular feature, think about how you can kind of transform a whole process. Because that, you're going to put in the same amount of time, same amount of energy, probably at least at the very early stages, same amount of money, into working on a new product, you might as well go for a big, audacious goal. So in the startup world, always think bigger. And that's something when I'm giving talks across an ocean somewhere, and people are used to kind of more traditional business thinking, they're not really taking risks. They're afraid to think really big and think of how they're going to change a particular category or entire industry. So I would encourage you to think as big as possible.
Thank you, Vitaly. All right, so this is the moment now. Alex, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, so please go ahead and help us by voting for the favorite innovator that you have. Go ahead and open a browser to slido.com, enter the hashtag LocWorld41, and you'll automatically be prompted to vote for your favorite innovator. We'll take 1 minute to do the voting.
All right, so we're going to mention real quick the prize for the winner is a white paper in multilingual with a value of $2,400. We thank Multilingual for doing that for us this year again. And now for the results.
Great. How about I'll announce the runner-up and you take the winner. All right, in second place, we'd like to congratulate Heather Shoemaker from Language.io. And before we announce the winner, we will be presenting the prize tomorrow in our final session. So please join us at 4 p.m. And we also have a special feature tomorrow. We're going to find a time when our winner can be at, we have a booth in our exhibit hall. And we'd love for an opportunity to introduce the winner to the rest of the industry. So please feel free. We'll be posting a push message through our LocWorld app that will let you know we'll have an hour tomorrow when you can come and meet our winner.
And the winner is, drumroll, Lori from SPI. Come on up.
Lori Silverstein, congratulations.
Congratulations, and thank you for all the innovators that were here today. Thank to all the dragons and Vitaly for joining us and asking some great questions today. We really appreciate that.
Great. Thank you, everyone.